Hello everyone, I am the Bandit Kirby. Welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews out of the deck text. On this episode of the Brewery, I'll be discussing a variation to a deck I'm currently building in real life, Trostani Selesnya's Voice. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel and reduce the cost to you. But the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck text, gifts, and more for as little as $1. You can also become a channel member for just 99 cents. Show off your support with a logo next to your name and exclusive emojis. Or you can always just support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Trostani is a 2/5 Dryad for 2 green and 2 white. They have an ETB ability that gains us life equal to the toughness of that creature that entered. On top of that, for 3 mana and tapping, we can populate, meaning we can create a copy of a creature token we control. I've loved this card since it came out in Return to Ravnica. When I returned to competitive Magic for the last time during the Innistrad Ravnica block, I had a green-white-blue homebrew with Trostani as an integral part of it, that I topped plenty and FNM back in the day. Curiously, I never built a commander deck with them until now. Fortunately, after so many years and so many sets, there have only been even more amazing cards released for them. So let's see what Trostani can do in 2025. Granted, it should be obvious by now that this is a copy tokens deck. In other words, I want to make token copies of the best creatures in the deck and then populate them. There are plenty of ways to go about this in green-white. There's Mirror Pool, which doesn't take up a slot in the deck. You do need colorless mana to activate it though, which is fine because the deck has Soul Ring, as well as plenty of colorless mana utility lands, which we'll see throughout the video. There's also Dino DNA for not only depriving reanimation decks of their graveyard creatures, but also giving us the opportunity to create a token copy of any creature exiled with it, including ours. Not only that, but there's 6/6 to boot, which is amazing at triggering many things in the deck. But you'll see what I mean later. The only off-putting aspect of this card is how immersion breaking it is to see a painted image of Richard Attenborough on a Magic card, but I digress. Blade of Selves, Iron Wolf Forger, and Legion Loyalty are the obvious includes though, since Myriad is a great way to create token copies. While the Myriad tokens are exiled at the end of combat, if we populate one of them before then, we get to keep the copy. So keep that in mind when timing your turn. That being said, these are strong on their own, especially Legion Loyalty, which is quite a bomb here and potential game ender. Helm of the Host also triggers on combat, but we get to keep the token. Best of all, the tokens are hasty non-legendary copies, meaning that populating them lets us keep them if the original was a legendary creature. I love this equipment, but it's even better here. Springheart Nantuko and Bramble Sovereign also gives us token copies we get to keep. We do have to pay mana to get them, but that's fine. The Sovereign can also give an opponent a token copy, but I don't need to collect favors that bad, so it's used mostly for our own benefit. The only downside to the Nantuko is that it has to be bestowed and it triggers on landfall. Fortunately, the deck is running all 7 fetch lands along with Crows and Verge, so we should be plenty able to trigger it often. Especially with the land-based ramp package I'm always running. You can't go wrong with these, especially Farseek, Nature's Lore, and 3 Visits, which can get any dual-typed land in the deck. Into the North is still great because we can get Arctic Treeline as well as any of the 8 snow-covered basics in the deck. Staff of Titania also synergizes nicely with Springheart Nantuko since it creates a Forest Dryad when the equipped creature attacks. Not only does this trigger landfall, but if we multiply the tokens created, it ramps us super hard. I love this card here. As a bonus, it also pumps the equipped creature by the number of forests we control. Good thing Yavimaya Cradle of Growth is also in here. Granted, it's good to run anyways to help our colorless utility lands also tap for green, but it makes Staff of Titania even better. Going back to copy tokens, some creatures have built-in self-copying effects like Watchful Ratstack and Giant Adaphage. The Ratstack becomes absolutely insane with token doublers. Honestly, you're going to need a calculator and plenty of paper to write down how many of these you can make. The Adaphage is another amazing bomb to populate. It's an oldie but a goodie and I love it. This also makes opponents uneasy once you get a bunch of them and no one has a board wipe. Timeless Witness can also kind of make a copy of itself via eternalizing it. While this might make us sort of lose it to exile, so long as we're able to populate at will, we can pretty much recover any card from our graveyard at instant speed with Trostani, so there's that at least. Or recovering a bunch of cards at once we're multiplying our tokens. Ocelot Pride, Selesnya Eulogist, and Nesting Dovehawk also help us copy our tokens. Ocelot Pride seems almost custom made for Trostani since they have built-in life gain and the Pride triggers if we gained life. Being able to create copies of tokens we created that turn is absolutely busted, especially if made in multiples, or if the Pride itself gets copied with something like Myriad. The Eulogist is another graveyard hate piece as a bonus since it populates on top of that. So good. The Duffhawk is another amazing creature to multiply since you can then make copies of other nesting Duffhawks, making it seem more nested than nesting. On top of that, it's a flyer that can also become massive depending on how many +1/+1 counters it gets from tokens entering our battlefield. Druid's Deliverance and Arachnogenesis are more ways to copy tokens but have other uses such as protecting us as a bonus. The Deliverance is a highly costed fog effect in that sense, but we do get to populate at instant speed too. Arachnogenesis is already good on its own, but so much more busted with token multiplying effects. Speaking of, those are Anointed Procession, Mondrak Glory Dominance, Parallel Lives, Doubling Season, Elspeth Stormslayer, Exalted Sunborn, Primal Vigor, and Ohertak Deepest Foundation. Of these cards I keep mentioning, the only iffy one here is Primal Vigor, since the effect is symmetrical. In any case, if facing against another token deck or a +1/+1 counters deck, you could just not cast it and be fine. Of these, Exalted Sunborn is amazing to copy since it can then create even more copies exponentially when populating. Same with creating non-legendary copies of Mondrak or Ohertak. Like I said, you'll need a calculator and a way to take notes. Dice won't be enough with this deck. I love it. Field of the Dead, Grove of the Guardian, and Sprout Swarm might not be as impressive as token copies, but the first two don't take up slots in the deck for being lands. The deck is running so many differently named lands that the field will trigger more often than not, especially with the fetch lands. Even more so with Staff of Titania. The Grove creates a massive beater which will become even more deadly when multiplied. Sprout Swarm has the potential of creating infinitely many saplings all for free if we multiply the effects. Doing this at the end of the turn before ours, and we could potentially end the game unless someone has an instant speed board wipe. And in any case, the deck is running Heroic Intervention, Rapid Vigor, Flawless Maneuver, Guardian of Faith, Rootborn Defenses, Teferi's Protection, and Clever Concealment to protect our board. Yes, phasing is the best way to protect our board since it'll be mostly tokens, but so long as it isn't something like an Overloaded Cyclonic Rift or an All Modes Farewell, we should be fine. Even most board wipes no longer have the Can't Be Regenerated clause, so you'd be surprised how amazing Rapid Vigor is here. As a bonus, Rootborn Defenses also populates. Absolutely love that card here. Guardian of Faith is great if we can also copy it before it dies after entering to protect our board. That way we can also phase out the original and potentially have unlimited ways to phase out all of our other creatures. This card is so amazing when used multiple times. We can also make the most of these tokens by drawing a ton of cards. Idol of Oblivion might seem slow, but it's amazing so long as we create a token each turn, which is very likely. And in any case, we can also use it to get a massive token afterwards. So this card is amazing every time. Caretaker's Talent also draws us a card whenever a token is created under our control, but it also triggers once per turn, essentially making it another Idol of Oblivion. However, it also has the potential to copy a creature token we control and then pump all our creatures statically with its last level. So this class does it all here. Elemental Bond, Garruk's Uprising, Tribute to the World Tree, Outcaster Trailblazer, Garruk's Pack Leader, Vaultborn Tyrant, Watley Radiant Champion, and Nissa Vital Force also draws us cards via ETB triggers. Granted, some of these care about the power of the creature, but that's fine if we're creating beefy tokens. Especially if we're creating token copies of Outcaster Trailblazer, Garruk's Pack Leader, or Vaultborn Tyrant. Watley is amazing if we get her emblem, which is almost guaranteed if she survives a turn around the table. Best of all, her emblem stacks, so if you keep getting one, you'll draw that many cards whenever a creature enters, regardless if it's a token or not. Nissa's emblem also stacks, but it's landfall and not for creatures. But that's still great with all the landfall in this deck is going to do anyways, especially if we have Staff of Titania out. Oran Frostfang also cares about our creatures in order to draw cards. However, those creatures need to be attacking. Not a problem. Send the horde massive enough across the table and you're bound to draw some cards. Bonus points for making copy tokens of the Frostfang, since you'll then draw that many cards upon connecting. Oh, and your attackers also gain Death Touch, so any weenies blocked will be training. Amazing. Bonder's Enclave and War Room make the most of the deck by drawing us cards without taking up a slot. Even though we only pay 2 life to the War Room, with how much life Trostani can gain us, that's more than negligible here. Even the life lost by Sylvan Library is negligible, basically letting us draw 2 extra cards each draw step for a measly 8 life we'll gain later. So good. Even this allusion to Puerto Rico is amazing since it has amazing art and is the cheapest version on the secondary market too. Absolutely stunning. Reliquary Tower, Thought Vessel, Decanter of Endless Water are included due to how many cards we can draw on this deck. In fact, we have to be careful not to deck ourselves since some card draw effects are obligatory and not optional. As a bonus, these mana rocks can also help us accelerate our game. Speaking of mana acceleration, this deck makes cards like Avendo, Waking Haven, and Growing Rites of Idlamok even more busted. Even if all we had was a bunch of weenie tokens, that might be enough to get Avendo online fairly quickly, granting us a Gaia's Cradle that needs only 1 green to activate. The enchantment filters for a creature when it enters, but then becomes a better Gaia's Cradle when transforming. Why better? Because it could tap for green even if our board was empty. Take that, unnecessarily placed on the reserve list Gaia's Cradle. As for interaction, the deck has its obvious includes. However, there are some spicy cards to consider which I'll now share with you. Not only do Gemrazor and Sawtooth's Demolisher function as interaction pieces, but can also help us bypass the legend rule. If either of these are mutated on top of a legendary creature, that mutate pile will not be legendary, since lower creatures only contribute their text box but not type line. So if we mutated Sawtooth's Demolisher onto Ohertak, we could then give it Myriad and its token copies will not go away as a state-based action because they will not be legendary. Absolutely amazing tech here. Sundering Growth is also synergistic interaction since it's a disenchant that populates. Not only can you get rid of annoyances like Rhystic Study, but you can also copy your best creature token on top of it. Don't worry, Beast Within's Emergency Eject, Generous Gift, Stroke of Midnight, and Unexplained Absence are still included since we need to be efficient with our removal. Sure, some of these give creature tokens to our opponents, but that's no problem for us. In terms of board wipes, the deck's only running Hour of Reckoning. That's because we don't want the board to be wiped. Chances are that we're going to almost always have the best board and thus some opponent will try the board wipe. That's why there's so many protective instants in the deck. Granted, this board wipe tends to be one-sided in our favor, which is why it's included. This almost always hands us the game if we keep a massive board afterwards against mainly empty ones. The rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. Of those not already mentioned, the deck's running Arctic Tree Line, Canopy Vista, Lush Portico, Radiant Grove, Scattered Groves, Temple Garden, Bountiful Promenade, Hushwood Verge, Sungrass Prairie, Sunpetal Grove, Wooded Bastion, Command Tower, and Ancient Tomb, as well as 4 of each snow-covered basic lands, all for the basic land wrap effects and into the north. As with all of my deck techs, you can build your mana base according to your budget. Whether you include more expensive cards or even cheaper cards is up to you. You do you. Similarly, if you want to up the bracket for your own build, go for it. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Trostani Selesnya's voice. A golden oldie but a goodie, this card holds a special place in my heart from the last time Standard was good, and I feel it would never be as good and varied as Innistrad Ravnica season. But nostalgia aside, with so many new cards and token support, Trostani is as good as ever and definitely worth building. So if you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. I also want to thank any channel members. Your membership is greatly appreciated. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Man at Kirby, and happy brewing.